we can open it up for Q&A.
James?
Hello, thank you very much. I'm interested in, as psychedelics become more mainstream, I suspect more religion organizations to emerge. And with that, I'm very fearful of New Age religions trying to copy indigenous practices, but make it their own. And so I'm curious if you could speak to particularly how psychoactive substances that are embedded in religion practices, could that model or methodology be patented? And if so, what's stopping from somebody from taking a particular drug, whether it be DMT or 5-MeO, attaching it to their new religion and then trying to get it within, I guess, a modeled state? Does that make sense?
It does. So, the kind of the bad news and maybe the shocking news here for a number of you is it is the type of thing that can be patented. Okay. Now, in theory, if it's copying indigenous practices, it should not validly be patented. But again, the patent office isn't going to be able to search for these things. We are keeping our eyes out for these things, and we will be challenging patents like that if we see patent applications like that if we see them, and reaching out to our networks to if it's copying indigenous practices, we're going to reach out for help. And what we've definitely learned in having those conversations is one of the questions we need to ask right away is, do you want the help? But yeah, that's something we will make ourselves available if help is wanted to help in that space. But yeah, if someone does actually come up with some innovative practices, it is the type of thing they can patent. And I agree with you. I think, if you look at some of the history about a number of the existing religions that are out there, including some of the big ones that might not have this history well publicized, a lot of them, there is some evidence they seem to have some psychedelic experiences in their founding. And so I think there's good reasons to think we will see a lot of new religion and religion-like practices come out of the use of these compounds.
And for the record, I just want to be clear that I'm all for self-religious practices. And if somebody has a spiritual belief, they're entitled to do that. But I'm just more concerned about the safety and efficacy of these medicines and making sure that people are practicing within their role of expertise.
Yeah. And, like everything in the world, a lot of people like to step out of their roles of expertise.
Thank you for this.
I don't necessarily have a question, but this is just getting a lot of gears turning. And I think I'm simultaneously more frustrated and angry with what's going on, but also overall feeling more optimistic with what you all are doing at Porta Sophia. But the thing that's really irking me right now is in the case of the DMT vape, 5-MeO DMT vape, is like, okay, so there are these kind of like what I would view as like trailblazers. There are people who already kind of like figured out these processes and devices and did all the legwork there, also with fear of legal repercussions and operating under that pressure. And now it's like theoretically, if the patent goes through, they would still be doing something illegal if they vaporize the DMT, but for a completely different reason, for the reason of, a company coming along and saying like, well, this is safe and, it can be done effectively, but we came up with the idea. That's just really
it's
bothering
got a
me.
lot of yucky angles around it. And so that patent has been granted. That one's out there in the world and could, in theory, be enforced, right? So, and two comments on that. So one is, vaping is one of the very limited routes by which that drug will be taken. And when you consider potentially individual home use of it, that's probably the most viable way for it to be taken. And, the question of, will that be, out there in the world as an approved, safe and efficacious version? We'll know that soon, because I believe there are clinical trials right now in either phase 2 or phase 3 for vaped 5-MeO DMT, right? So we're going to get the answer to that, quite soon. and that might be sort of out there in the world, and then that patent is sitting there. So that's one of the reasons we're targeting this one in particular. Is it's an issued patent, and it does, in the hands of an owner who's a patent attorney, it does seem to present a risk that is going to only cause trouble. And if we can clear the path, we're going to clear the path on it. And I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to clear the path on this one. We'll see.
Well, yeah, I'll be rooting for you for sure. For you all.
We have another question from Karen. From a policy perspective, are patents the wise direction to protect Indigenous knowledge and practice, or is there a different route that's more appropriate?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'm going to highlight the word protect there, because like historically, it hasn't been sort of legally protected. There aren't, to my knowledge, a lot of legal regimes to protect it. Now, obviously, there is efforts out there to create those regimes, but at the end of the day, those have to be implemented sort of country by country or potentially state by state, or by treaty. And those are slow processes that are political and rarely give the full value that one would want. So to the extent someone, if patents are good for protecting new innovations, they cannot protect old innovations. So if there are Indigenous groups that develop something new, they may want to consider patenting it as a way to prevent it from being abused outside of their circles, and patenting would certainly be one way to do that. And at Porta Sophia, we volunteer our time to do that for free for Indigenous organizations who want to do that. But there's a huge cost component to patenting. We're willing to sort of make that cost go away if someone wants to file a patent to protect others from getting into their space. Because a lot of these practices are so old, though, patenting is really not a viable option for existing practices. So having one of these sort of government recognized rights to traditional practices is maybe the strongest way to go to prevent interference by outsiders. And that will require a lot of political action. And if people are interested, you can find those groups. They're actually quite active now in trying to get that off the ground.
I just have a clarifying question. Didn't you say that this kind of falls into the category of defensive patents? So even though an organization or a group or an individual is not granted the patent, it then puts it on the record for existing. So that's the only doesn't give protection.
That could be done. You could file a document with the government that describes all of the things you want to make sure are very clear or out there, so that no one can pretend that they invented them now. Absolutely. And that doesn't have to be through a patent. It could also be defensive publishing, putting things anywhere out in the world where they're easy to find. Although there's nothing easier to find for patent reviewers than patents. So going the patent route is a particularly good way to do it.
Thank you. Arshia, do we have any questions from the feed?
No, we don't have any questions on the stream.
On the stream, sorry. Thank you. Technology.
Well, I might throw a question out there if you're open, David.
Absolutely.
I guess just in a general sense, you kind of seeing it come out here in the question and all the questions everyone has. There's like I think a really good passionate kind of activism streak in the psychedelic scene. For a variety of reasons, which is wonderful. I think is why so many people feel drawn to here. For those of us who aren't in the legal world, I know you touched on this a little bit with the various things you guys are doing, but right now, like if someone wanted to help right now, could you speak on that, people who aren't in the legal world? And then maybe this kind of subsection of that, because there's a lot of academics in this group and watching this, is there anything we could do particularly to help? I know you mentioned that that archival project, so maybe you could speak a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so I'd say there's I'll describe it at 3 layers. So in the simplest layer, just learning about it, getting smart about it, and talking about it to anyone who's willing to listen helps. The more people who sort of know about these issues, the better. So the fact that you're hosting something like this really helps, because it gets people who care to know about it. And then when problems arise, they're sort of much closer to knowing who to contact to help deal with those problems. So that's one of the biggest things that someone can do. But more directly, I would say two things. If people are interested in volunteering for the Archival Research Network, head to our website, fill out the form. And what we're looking for here are people with sort of expertise in the area of information gathering, but you don't need to be a super expert. And there's more information about that on the site. But separate from that, we are a nonprofit organization that is volunteer funded. And we're happy to take donations from anyone. So to the extent people have some spare dollars and want to donate to the cause, we have a very small professional staff and a lot of volunteers. So for example, I'm a private practice attorney. I am not an employee of Porta Sophia. I'm one of the founders of it, but I'm a advisor and consultant, and 100% of my time is free. And we have a number of attorneys who do the same. The costs are largely tied to paying some fees to do some of these patent office filings and to pay for our professional staff. And it's a very small group that does these 100+ third-party submissions. They work really hard and they're really smart. And so we're really careful with our money. So it's there's a huge bang for your buck, and every little bit helps. So I'll throw out the note there, and easy ways to donate on our website with easy buttons to click. We also have swag. So if you want like a Porta Sophia t-shirt or other things, we have some really cool designs. They're not very expensive. And the profits of that goes 100% into our efforts.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Except we can't get them before Christmas because Canada Post here in Canada is on strike.
Oh, no.
There are always other holidays to gift Porta Sophia swag that are all appropriate. It looks like we're running out of questions. I really just am so grateful that you could join us today. I think from the scientific perspective and the humanities perspective, we often have a lot of questions about how all of this really comes to fruition, right? And it is such this niche area that is yours, right? We're like, well, how do we do this? We train people to deliver services if the medical model prevails, but then how is medicine available? And, what really inspires me about your work is you continue to find solutions to create and maintain access to medicine, which is so valuable and important. So thank you so much.
Well, again, thank you for having me. The more people who learn about this, the stronger we all are as a team to make sure this is done as correctly as it can be.
Yeah, thank you so much again. I feel like this is only our second event, but now we're on a streak, so it's definitely set the bar high for everything moving forward. So this is super informative, and I'm glad that we all have an outlet we can potentially help through.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the Army.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how, and I'm hoping that there is that connection. Like last night, there was a panel discussing sort of decolonizing the psychedelic space and infusing it with some ethical awareness in relationship to appropriation ownership. So it's interesting how I'm hoping that folks will start to get connected, because so often, and as it is in many different domains, there's sort of these siloed advocacy activities going on, but I'm seeing that there's these movements that are percolating, and that will make a really nice sort of matrix, if you will, to create some of that transformative change.
Yeah, I have the same optimism, and I'm seeing the same connections made.
It's the mycelium network.
They really do want to eat this, don't they?
Well, unless there are any last questions, I guess we can wrap things up.
Very good. Well, I'm glad I learned about what you're doing, and I will keep watching your work as you move forward.
Thank you, David. And as we shall as well.
All right.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me, and then have a good day, all.
Wonderful. Thank you
Hopefully
so
see
much,
you-
David. Thank you so much.